The following is part of what is a briefing for the Australian Signals Directorate and wider intelligence community. So this is some of my observations from having unfortunately had to become a pretty respected expert in espionage and related things in Australia. Probably the most famous person in that space. And I've had to, because just the circumstances of my life, I had to deal with domestic violence perpetrated by people who had access to some very spooky stuff, who had access to our cyber warfare infrastructure. And because of this, I had to become an expert at fighting our intelligence apparatus to be able to eventually have a normal life. And my life does not become anything approaching normal until I get a resolution in this space. So here is some of the information that you guys need to know, because there are some very important, there are some policy and doctrinal things which need to be changed, particularly in the Australian Signals Directorate. So, my background is that I exposed a large amount of corruption in the Australian Signals Directorate. Basically, what was happening is that Michael Armstrong, who was previously a fairly charismatic member of the Signals Directorate, much loved member of it, sort of like a beloved veteran, but also a little bit culty. What happened is that he was quite influential for people who were still serving in the Signals Directorate after he had retired, and he had ended up using the Signals Directorate to facilitate improving his brand as an artist. So he would use his association with the Signals Directorate and the Army to liaise with people such as Jordan Peterson and Jocko Willink and other big celebrities to bolster his image, and also to bolster the image of his gym. And because some of the members of his gym were also part of the Signals Directorate, and many of the people of the Signals Directorate attended his gym and they saw him as a bit of a mentor, everyone kind of was just like, okay, it's just a little bit of an extracurricular thing, it's fine. It wasn't fine, it was overt corruption, and he was doing it for personal reasons, personal incentives. And it should never have happened. But I was at the forefront of that. I exposed that. I also began a very large art movement, which also involved exposing a large amount of that corruption. And I've made a big song and dance about the harassment I've received from the Signals Directorate, because it's been entirely inappropriate. Now, I feel as if a large amount of the people in that institution at this point that I'm still fighting, and maybe this is a point which I should save for a different time, but I've already started talking about it, so I'll say it. I don't think there's so much continuing on with their agitations of me out of the dignity of their institution, other than their own personal lost dignity for the institution. They want to feel as if what they are working for and towards is something good, so they sort of stuff in a narrative about what they're fighting for, when really it's just their own selfish fucking reasons. And the actual institution doesn't really seem to be standing for much at this moment. There seems to be a lack of doctrinal and set leadership. I think there's been an over-emphasis on decentralization, and there needs to be an emphasis on, well, what is the fucking purpose of the institution, having an institution with an agenda, if everyone just does their own fucking thing. Because what has ended up happening is that when everyone's done their own fucking things, that they've just done corruption, and you've given them power, you've given them access to all this personal and private information and access to our cyber warfare utilities, and you've just given them power. And no oversight and not even given them an appropriate mission, and you've let them actually come up with their mission. And that's really fucking concerning. Now, I need to so first of all, fucking come up with a mission, all right? Come up with something that you're fighting for. Come up with an agenda that you're working towards, and then allocate people's tasks based on that, so that they don't end up doing weird shit like bullying a civilian as a hobby because they have nothing else to do, and then letting their own their own political biases show up. Okay, because this is the other thing with decentralized command. This is the most important thing. You guys do not have training as political scientists. Okay, most of these people are just who I've interacted with have been cyber warfare guys. Okay, they have no idea about political science. They don't know geopolitics, and they're getting their ideas about who the enemy is and who they're meant to be worried about through these people like Jordan Peterson, right? Jordan Peterson is not an expert in global politics, right? He's not an expert in any form of politics. He's a conservative religious leader. He's fine within his role as just like one of the many options that young men may go to when they need some form of role model. And he's totally fine for that. But he's not going to be the person you go to when you want to have leadership in a fucking national intelligence service. Yet, I've seen this happen specifically with the young men at ASD who I've met through Rogue Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was just strange. And even people like Michael, it's not even a surprise someone like Michael, he's not a fucking political scientist. It takes years of study to understand global policy and to understand the theories which get involved in that. You need to be able to speak to experts and have those people shaping the opinions of the institution. And if most intelligence organizations have an existing global history or political science capability, they have someone who's capable of giving a briefing to people about these theories and what's going on in different countries and understanding the politics. It doesn't seem that we have that capability here. Certainly not in this case. Like in my case, I'm a person who has some quite understandable left-wing beliefs, but because these people have got this very, this primary school or low-level high school understanding of world history and politics, they latch on to these strange religious leaders or these people who have no fucking idea what they're talking about, and they're going to, and they're seeing the world through their ends, and anything slightly left-wing, they're getting caught up in weird culture war shit. Okay, that's it. That's the main thing. And I've been caught up, the Australian Signals Directorate got caught up in culture war shit. You got these guys, these young men who are kind of, if I'm honest, a little bit odd. They're all slightly introverted, slightly autistic often, eccentric people who you have employed in these cyber warfare roles, and you've linked them up, and that's the other thing, is that a lot of these people kind of live a bit online. Like, this is something associated with IT, and the culture war stuff, which is a large amount of it's around things such as trans, gender, and these things. It's stuff which has very little to do with our day-to-day life in most instances. You find a person someone says that they want to be called a woman. It's very rare, even among people who might even have a stake in the more conservative side of that argument, that they would call that person a man, right? It's very rare, because they usually realize it's just not that big of a deal. Okay? It's something which people rally around online because it's something that you can draw battlegrounds around. It's not something which actually matters that particularly much. Like, I'm certain some people who are really into gender are offended when I say that, but there are so many different policies and areas and things that we can worry about in the world, such as poverty and starvation, all these things, for that to be the central battleground of all of your politics. As in, like, if you were to define the entire cause of, like, doctrine of a political group, right, and you want that political group to be a useful agent for humanity, resolving gender isn't going to be the thing which is going to solve it. You'd choose it to be like, this is the political party which ends poverty, all right? Or this is the party which, if you want to be more of a green, you'd be like, this is the party which ends climate change, or something like that, right? It's not that big of a deal. Of course it's important, but it's not like, people have become fascinated with this culture war thing, and I kind of got dragged into it because among these people are particularly the Jordan Peterson fan club, because they are truly insufferable, the more diehard people there. I think old school Jordan Peterson would shriek at new school Jordan Peterson. But the way that, like, just their fucking frustrate anything which is slightly left wing, anything where it's like, maybe let's tax the rich a bit more, let's reverse negative gearing, let's have a tax on asset appreciation. Okay, those are not radical things. Those are things that at a point in time in Australia we actually had a policy for. Okay, those are things that I've stood for, but I've been labelled as a Chinese spy by some of these very strange people because they don't have a vocabulary for political ideas. They just don't understand it. They don't understand the history behind these ideas. They don't understand the cultural context in which they are appearing, and that's why you need to have experts in political and economic history at institutions such as the Signals Directorate. And you need to bring these people in when you are making decisions. And because otherwise what's going to happen, and this is the thing, and this is why you can't have decentralized command, because you're going to have all of these silly autistic little shits who are receiving their mentorship program through Michael and Jordan Peterson and the Australian Signals Directorate, who are hyped up on their, discipline equals freedom, default aggressive mindset from Jocko Willink. And they're going to go, well, we just need to take action. We need to take charge of the situation, and we need to make sure that this person here, his word doesn't spread, because we don't like that he's gotten popular and he was briefly associated with us, and we feel entitled, and we feel that we are owed something, right? And we're going to fucking bring him down, right? That's the Signals Directorate, or at least the people I've interacted with there. So you guys need to develop an actual intelligence capability. You need to be able to be briefed on things, okay? Like, I know in the United States, they have a person who has an excellent understanding of all these different fields who will sit down and brief the president on foreign policy, okay, and what's going on, the historical context of what's going on around it, right? We're going to have something similar to that, but every indication I've seen is that it's at a much lower standard. That's what I'm inferring, because I haven't seen it on the inside, but just the general cluelessness in which they've operated around me just makes it so evident. So this is the biggest one. We need leadership figures in intelligence who can say something useful and desirable and know what they're fucking talking about. Because we don't fucking have that. And that's a really basic fucking one. We need to get people who have done who have a political science background, who transition in and say and begin explaining to intelligence people the history of their behavior, how it's fucked up, because most of the time it doesn't achieve anything useful, and what we can learn from it. But more than that, we need public leadership figures. Okay, it's just icons that people in the intelligence community can go around, look to, and say, there's a person who's telling us what's going on. This is the case with the relationship between Australia and China. This is the case in the politics and what's going on in Nigeria. We need someone who has credibility in the Australian intelligence community to be able to sort of take that kind of role, because that void is going to be filled by someone who doesn't have that skill set, such as Jordan Peterson. Okay? You can't just get a random mentor and expect them to be able to do that job. We need to start developing media talent for the intelligence community. And it's not for PR purposes. It's for the intelligence people, so that they have something to aspire to. Okay? They need to have something in front of them so they know what good looks like and is telling them what's actually giving them good authoritative information. Okay. Now, I think I mentioned this before, is that they're just, all the behaviour I've seen is conducive to just a complete lack of doctrine. So there doesn't seem to be an overall mission for the Australian Signals Directorate. I'm saying this because how the fuck do you end up spending so much time doing this to just a random civilian? What doctrinal purpose has this provided? How has this progressed the interests of our nation? Was there a mission objective written somewhere? Like, in a grand strategy context, what was achieved? Like, where did the needle move here? Right? Because to me, it's just being at the receiving end and lost so much, and known that it hasn't been for any actual national purpose, and it's just so disheartening. It would have been terrible no matter what. No matter what has been done to me is horrific, but just the senselessness in which all of the harassment and the abuse and the use of our government assets to harass and control me. Just the senselessness of it all. You need to be able to link back your behavior to the mission of the institution. If you can't do that, then you're not doing your job. And that's, and like, there's ways that people end up, and you need to be careful with how people do that, because we live in that hybrid warfare environment where people are able to just come up with whatever reason they fucking want for why they're acting in a terrible way. And that's why we need to have more centralized leadership, and for the institution to rein in these people who are just doing whatever the fuck they want. Okay? The reason why you build an institution, forget about if it's the fucking railroads department or the Australian Signals Directorate or the fucking ATO, is because you want it to fulfill a role. Okay? Right? You don't have people fulfilling a role if they just do whatever the fuck they want. You can't decentralize things so much that people aren't actually fulfilling a mission. And when people end up choosing what their mission is, as what happened here, which was to abuse and harass a random civilian because he was better at them at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then just ad hoc find reasons why, because they were part of a gang, and this was just the dynamics of that community. It's just ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. People, real basics. You have a management structure. Person at the top gives instructions to a person below them. That person gives instructions to a person below them. Just bring it back to real basics. Have people follow fucking instructions at the Signals Directorate. Let's start there. Hybrid warfare. You guys, because we have this hybrid warfare environment where where we've now got all these different variables, which are now going to be considered areas where the enemy are going to try and infiltrate and adjust. You need to both, first of all, understand the role of the Signals Directorate, which is to stop foreign interference in that space, and it's not to adjust our views of things. We are a free society, and the attitude and particularly the attitudes of these young fucking operators, who are, again, the ones I met through Rogue BJJ, who have been hyped up on fucking Jocko Willink and Jordan Peterson. They're doing weird fucking shit. Okay? Bring things back to basics. You guys are responsible for stopping interference when it comes to our cyber, through all of our signals infrastructure, and to also provide attack in that domain. It's not to influence the Australian public. Stay the fuck away from us. Anyway, those are the main points which I can give as constructive criticism to the Signals Directorate and related signals apparatus in Australia. I need to express to you what you guys have done to me, okay? So long before there were any escalations, you guys had destroyed my life. I had been, and it was even before the stuff with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym. When I moved to Canberra, I began being harassed by people just associated with Michael in the signals world. You guys are just exceedingly childish. I've never seen anything like it. And when I was doing my work, first of all at the insurance firm, I would be having these tough KPIs to achieve, and then I might have an issue where someone intentionally fucks with my GPS as a prank, or I might have an issue where someone adjusts data in something because they're trying to be my friend and they think that by adjusting it makes my situation better. I've dealt with so much childish behavior from people in Signals. And there was a time where I'd have back and forths with people because I was coming to a new community. I was interested in all these things, including intelligence. And I would have these back and forths online with these people who were doing this work. And as they were doing their hacks and hacking my stuff and doing things, I would read what they were saying and things like this. And I kind of participated in it because I didn't really have a choice. And I was quite a good sport, all things considered. There was a part of this which was that I was a veteran who had been bastardized when I was at the Naval College as a kid, and the military community hasn't been very happy about that, particularly Navy, because I've demonstrated myself to be an exceedingly competent person, and what happened there and how messy my situation was made a lot of people quite upset. So there was actually a movement to try and get me back in Navy or back in these things because these are institutions which have, how do you put it? They don't just exist as government bodies or businesses. They have cultures, and there's a camaraderie and there's a belonging and citizenship of those institutions. I think, and I did participate with a lot of this, but I didn't have any choice. And that's the biggest thing I need you guys to understand is that there's a person at the other end of whatever's being hacked. And to you, it's a little prank. But if they're constantly being hacked and harassed, you've actually ruined their life. You've stopped them from being able to reliably use their information technology, and you've taken away their privacy. And that's a very disconcerting thing. I'm a person who enjoys being alone and in private, and having lost my privacy even before all of this crazy stuff happened with Humanity Health Group. It was terrible what was done to me. I truly wish I never crossed paths with you guys at all. And by the time it got to, like, I did have jobs where the GPS, and this was when I was at Humanity Health Group and I was under KPIs. And this is the issue, because these people work for government. They're not used to working as hard and with the same conditions and the same numbers and the ruthlessness of the corporate world, right? So them fucking with me when my stress level is already at the highest possible point was terrible. And it was the most unprofessional thing. What were they thinking? They weren't. They were behaving as children. I once had an instance where my GPS, which was set and it was taking me to the correct address because I knew the routes, then got adjusted and towards the final stage of the route, and I ended up in a place where far away from where I was meant to go. And I was like, was this a prank? Like, is this something which was actually meant to happen or not? And when you're constantly being hacked and abused, you don't know. And it's so disconcerting. And this is the fact, and because I was being malevolently abused, because remember, I was being abused by people who knew me from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they just didn't like that I was better at them, and for a time, they were really jealous that Michael and I were quite close friends for a while. These are very strange people. They over-identify with their fucking hobby, and they get so caught up in the stupid fucking social dynamics of a fucking hobby group. Jesus Christ. But they like I can it has not been possible for me to be able to have a job or anything because it just takes one malevolent person who has access to that infrastructure to ruin my life if they want. Okay? And that's what they've done. And that's why I've had to spend so much of my time resolving this, because my life does not continue. It's just not possible until these people are put in prison. There is a reform at the Signals Directorate and wider Signals community, and this kind of problem never happens again. It's a massive change. It's something which has had to, the amount of work I've had to do, like, it's insane. I've had to become an expert fucking spy and an expert in our national fucking security because I'm being harassed by misbehaving children at the Australian Signals Directorate. It's unbelievable. And the worst part is how malevolent a large amount of it was. So I was these people, they're used to living online. They're all into cyberbullying. They're all into online communication. The amount of cyberbullying I got from these IT guys associated with Rogue BJJ before there was an escalation, along with the constant hacks, the access to all my private world and private information that my enemies and people who disliked me could then access and look at and stare at. And the prodding and the abuse which occurred was terrible, and I fucking broke. Like, the message that I sent Michael, the first messages I sent before there was any escalation were me saying, Michael, I'm fucking falling apart. I need a fucking gold card or something. I'm being terribly abused by these people. Please give me a list of names so I can hand those over to the authorities and they can try and work towards solving this. And from that we had the escalation because he wouldn't give me the list of names, which would be then handed to ASIO or AFP, because I was trying to be very sensitive, and at that time I thought Michael might be a mediating influence on these people. But he isn't. He is not at all. And the only way that so what I did is that I had to make the corruption overt and the behavior overt. So what I did is that I, of course, made a very legitimate, real, not credible statement of fact of what was going to happen to Michael. And I did that because by doing this, a response from the army or the Signals Directorate is an overt sign of corruption because they have no business in this case. That is purely an AFP matter. And that attack was my version of what battered women do when they call the police ordering a pepperoni pizza. Okay? That was that. That was me trying to get the police attention on the behavior of people at Rogue BJJ in the Signals Directorate. And for better or worse, it seems to have almost worked. The police are fucking useless, and they do not serve the people. They serve people with power and authority, and unfortunately, that is the people in the Signals Directorate to an extent, because they have a pseudo flare of legitimacy, but they misbehave so fucking completely that they don't get to wear that anymore. The overt corruption where we had a person who was taking a civil matter, a civil family, well, I suppose in his world it would be considered family, because to him for a long time he thought of me like his son, and I think of him like a complete total cunt. was that that was a a civil matter, that was a community matter, or even you could say a criminal matter, but it has nothing to do with the Signals Directorate or the Army. And the fact that he went to use those resources was a case of corruption and is something which is prosecutable and needs to be prosecuted. Michael Armstrong must be sent to prison, and the people who engaged in the use of cyber warfare activities and gang behavior associated with Michael Armstrong, as a following the escalations which followed, also need to go to prison. I have been surviving terrible abuse from these people. And that's the story. I hope that the heads at Australian Signals Directorate, I hope Mike Burgess gets his fucking shit together. I'm done pretending that he and I are still friends. I hope the fucking that our policing bodies begin doing their fucking job about these things. Because in this situation, I am a civilian whose life has been completely annihilated because of the misbehavior and corrupt behavior, and it needs to just be called that. It is corruption. This is the kind of thing that we expect in third world countries. But Australia is not special. We are quite corrupt here in the executive arm of our government. There's corruption there. It's so obvious. It's so obvious, particularly in the intelligence space, because whenever there's a lack of accountability, misbehavior flourishes, and so does corruption, and that's what's happened here. Either way, that's the conclusion of the brief.